He thought the hardest part of his day was over when he pulled into the driveway of the mansion he worked his entire life to own. But before his car even reached the gate, something stopped him. Not a broken lock, not a security malfunction. It was people, his own neighborhood association, standing in his way, questioning his right to be there. He wasn't trespassing. He wasn't lost. He wasn't breaking a single rule. This was his home. Yet in that moment, none of that mattered. All they saw was his skin, the laughter of children inside, the quiet comfort he had built for his family. Suddenly, it all felt fragile. He realized no amount of success could shield him from suspicion. No title, no bank account, no accomplishments. And as minutes passed, the situation only escalated. What happened next wasn't just humiliating, it was dangerous. So how does a man fight back when even his own front gate becomes a battlefield? This is not just his story. It's a reflection of something much bigger. It was the kind of day that reminded him why he had worked so hard. The sun dipped low across the wide lawns of his neighborhood, painting the sky in soft streaks of gold and violet. Inside the mansion he called home. His children's laughter echoed faintly through the windows, spilling warmth into the quiet evening air. For years he had dreamed of this, a place where his family could feel safe, where hard work turned into something real, something lasting. He wasn't born into wealth. Every inch of that driveway, every brick in those walls carried the weight of long nights, missed holidays, and endless sacrifices. To him, this house wasn't just property, it was proof. Proof that determination could build a future. Proof that barriers could be broken. Neighbors often saw him jogging the tree-lined streets in the mornings, a friendly wave ready for anyone who looked his way. On weekends, he grilled in the backyard, the smell of barbecue drifting over the fences. His life was calm, structured, and ordinary in the best way. But beneath that calm, an unspoken truth lingered. No matter how high he climbed, there were those who refused to see beyond the color of his skin. He had faced it before. Suspicious glances at luxury stores, double takes from strangers when he stepped out of expensive cars. Little reminders that whispered, "You don't belong here." Still, he pushed forward, believing that within his own home, he was untouchable. That night, as he steered his car toward the iron gates of his mansion, the routine felt comforting, familiar, normal, but normal was about to shatter, because waiting on the other side of those gates was a test that would strip away the illusion of safety he thought he had, built and force him to confront a reality he could no longer ignore. The gate should have swung open with a simple press of the remote. Instead, his car rolled to a halt. In front of the black iron bars stood 3 people from the Homeowners Association, clipboards in hand, arms folded. Their faces were tight with suspicion, as if they'd been waiting. He tapped the remote again. Nothing. The gate stayed shut. For a moment he thought it was a mistake, maybe a malfunction. But then came the looks. Long, piercing stares that carried more weight than any locked gate ever could. "Can we help you?" one of them asked, tone sharp, words clipped. Not welcoming, not curious, accusatory. The question stunned him. Help me? This was his driveway, his property, his home. He should have been the one asking why they were blocking him. He calmly explained, "I live here." But the words fell flat. Their eyes narrowed as if he were an intruder rehearsing a lie. The clipboard woman leaned forward, scanning his car, his clothes, and his skin. "We haven't seen you around before." He felt his chest tighten. He'd lived there for months, jogged past their homes, waved from his yard. But somehow in this moment, he was invisible. Or worse, unwelcome. He repeated himself, slower this time, firmer. "This is my house." A man shook his head. "Do you have proof?" Proof. For a man pulling into his own gate. For a father whose children's laughter could still be faintly heard inside. His hands clenched around the steering wheel. He knew the danger of letting anger show. One wrong word, one sharp gesture, and the situation could spiral. So he pulled out his license, his address plain as day. He held it out. But even then, the suspicion didn't fade. Instead, they scribbled notes on their clipboards as though documenting a crime. Minutes dragged on. Cars began to slow on the street, drivers craning their necks to watch. To them, it looked like he didn't belong, like he was caught in the act of something sinister. his face burnt with humiliation. A lifetime of hard work, standing there like it meant nothing. But humiliation was only the beginning, because soon one of them pulled out a phone, dialing, speaking in hushed tones. He didn't need to hear the words to know. They were calling for backup, calling in authorities for a man locked outside his own home. His heart raced. He thought of his children inside. What if they came outside, curious about the commotion? What would they see? Their father treated like a stranger at his own door? He tried again, voice steady but edged with desperation. "Look, this is my family's home. Please move." But reason was wasted. They weren't here for answers. They were here for control. And with every passing second, he realized this wasn't about rules. It wasn't about gates or addresses. It was about him, his existence in a place they didn't think he deserved to be. The phone call ended. "Authorities are on their way," one of them said. Authorities. The word sent a chill down his spine. He knew how quickly misunderstandings could turn into headlines or funerals. He considered his options. Drive off, and it would look like he was fleeing. Step out of the car, and it could be seen as aggression. Sit still, and the narrative could still be twisted against him. Every move felt like a trap. He reached for his phone. Not to call the police, they were already coming, but to call someone he trusted. Someone who would stand with him. Someone who could turn humiliation into defense. On the other end of the line, calm voices answered. Voices he knew well. Voices from a past life he didn't often speak about. A past that had trained him for danger, but never for this kind of battlefield. They listened. And then without hesitation they said, "We're on our way." Minutes ticked by like hours. His pulse hammered. Neighbors peeked from windows, the spectacle growing by the second. And then headlights appeared at the far end of the street. Not the flashing red and blue he dreaded, at least not yet. These were sleek, dark vehicles gliding silently into view. The people blocking the gate straightened, their smug expressions flickering into unease, because what arrived wasn't backup for them. It was his, the kind of backup no one expected to see in a quiet suburban cul-de-sac. And in that moment, the power dynamic shifted. But just as he felt a spark of relief, another thought hit him like ice. The authorities were still on their way. And when they arrived, what would they see? A black man at a locked gate? Or something far more dangerous in their eyes? The tension had only begun. Red and blue lights splintered the night as sirens wailed down the street. The quiet cul-de-sac transformed in an instant. Neighbors pressing against windows, phones raised, eyes wide. The air felt heavier, sharper, every sound amplified. He stayed seated in his car, hands locked on the steering wheel, every nerve screaming caution. He had lived long enough to know how fragile this moment was. One wrong move, one misinterpreted gesture, and everything he had worked for, his family, his life, could shatter in an instant. The officers stepped out, hands hovering near their holsters. Their eyes flicked from him to the group blocking the gate, then to the dark SUVs parked just behind. Confusion rippled across their faces, but suspicion hardened their stance. A command barked through the night. "Step out of the vehicle!" His chest tightened. The voices of his children echoed faintly from inside the house, a reminder of what was at stake. He wanted to shout, "This is my home!" He wanted to demand, "Why don't you believe me?" But the words caught in his throat. He knew the truth. In this moment, innocence wasn't protection. Silence wasn't safety. Nothing was guaranteed. He moved slowly, deliberately, every muscle aching with restraint. He opened the door, stepped out, and raised his hands high. The cold air bit against his skin. "Identify yourself," an officer snapped. He gave his name, his address, his proof, all of it. But the doubt lingered in their eyes, heavy and unrelenting. The HOA members stood smugly nearby, watching as if they had orchestrated every second of this humiliation. The silence stretched until one of his friends stepped forward from the SUVs. Trained, composed, but unflinching. His presence shifted the air. Calm authority mixed with a warning. For the first time, the officers hesitated, realizing this was not the man they had been led to believe. Still, the tension didn't break. Guns weren't drawn, but they could be. Voices weren't raised, but they could erupt. The thin thread holding this scene together felt ready to snap. And in that razor-edge moment, he realized something deeper than fear. This wasn't just about him being denied entry to his home. This was about a system that could strip him of dignity, safety, and belonging without cause, without hesitation, without apology. The officers exchanged glances, radios crackling, uncertainty hanging in the air. The world seemed to slow. His heart pounded louder than the sirens still echoing down the block. And then, just as the night threatened to collapse into chaos, a child's voice cut through the silence. From behind the iron gate, his daughter's small face pressed against the bars. "Daddy?" she whispered. Every eye turned. Every heart stopped. Because in that moment, the scene was no longer about suspicion or authority. It was about a child watching her father stand in the crosshairs of a world that refused to see him as home. And what happened next would decide everything. The moment his daughter's voice pierced the silence, everything shifted. The officers' stances softened, just slightly, but enough for the air to release its chokehold. His little girl's eyes, wide with fear and innocence, forced everyone present to confront the humanity of the man they had cornered. He lowered his hands slowly, careful not to provoke a reaction. His daughter needed to see strength, not fear. With steady words, he told the officers once more, "This is my home. That's my family behind that gate. I belong here." After what felt like an eternity, the gate finally creaked open. The officers didn't apologize. The HOA members didn't step aside with remorse. They simply moved back, their silence louder than any accusation. It wasn't victory. It wasn't justice. It was survival. He walked inside, scooping his daughter into his arms. Her small hands clung to his shoulders as if to anchor him, to remind him what truly mattered. But even as the front door closed behind him, the weight of the night remained. The humiliation, the suspicion, the near danger, it didn't end at the gate. It lived inside him now. Later that evening, as the house settled into uneasy quiet, he stood at the window. The mansion that once symbolized achievement now felt like a cage, a place where belonging was conditional, fragile, and easily ripped away. He had built walls of success, but they could not shield him from the reality of being seen first by the color of his skin, not by the content of his life. The impact went beyond one night. His children had witnessed it too. Their laughter had been replaced by questions. Why didn't they believe you? Why did they think you didn't belong? Questions no child should have to ask. Questions without simple answers, and that is the deeper wound. Because this story isn't rare, it isn't isolated. It echoes across neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, and streets. A man stopped at his own gate is no different than a student questioned in his own classroom, a shopper shadowed in her own store, or a driver pulled over on his own road. Different settings, same suspicion, same injustice. He survived that night, but the truth is many don't. For countless others, what begins with doubt and discrimination ends with something irreversible. And every time it happens, the message is clear. Success doesn't shield you, money doesn't protect you, and respectability doesn't save you. So what do we do with that truth? Do we ignore it because it makes us uncomfortable? Or do we face it head on, acknowledging that racism isn't just history? It's happening in real time to people whose only crime is living in their own skin. The man at the gate will carry that night with him forever. It is part of his story now, but it's not just his burden. It's ours. Because until stories like his stop repeating, none of us can claim we live in a just world. He made it inside his home that night. But the question remains, how many more will be left standing outside, forced to prove they belong where they already are? And perhaps the harder question, when will belonging stop being something that needs proof at all?